Hi there. I'm Smita Murthy, Managing Partner at OpenCliff Partners. We're a product advisory and consulting firm. We provide product advisory and enable value creation throughout the product lifecycle for technology and tech-enabled businesses. We partner with investors and boards, founders and CEOs, product leaders, and individuals, meeting them where they're at in value creation. This podcast series focuses on cross-functional perspectives on what it takes to build successful products across domains and industries. I interview leaders from various functions with whom I've worked with to build and launch great products and the lessons we learned along the way. It brings me immense joy to host a fellow woman product leader, Amanda Nite, today. Amanda has over 20 years of experience in clinical and technical operations, specializing in e-clinical solutions. She has held leadership roles at top organizations, including Oracle Health, Medidata, IQVIA, Clario, and Icon PLC. As SVP of Product and Operations at Trial, Amanda drives innovation and operational excellence, focusing on developing impactful solutions for clinical trials and patient engagement. As an expert in product strategy, Amanda excels at aligning product development with market needs, mentoring emerging leaders, and fostering collaboration to achieve organizational success. I am so happy to have you on this podcast, Amanda. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Smith. I'm so glad to be here.
Awesome. Let's start off by you telling our audience a fun fact about yourself.
Sure. So I picked a fun fact that we have in common a little bit. So I know we both share a love of hiking big mountains. So my fun fact is that I've summited 5 14ers in Colorado, and I hope to do many more.
Wow. Okay. This I didn't know, even though we work together and we talk about mountains. So that's a sidebar we're going to have because I want to know which ones those are. And maybe I'll visit you when you're in Colorado for your, not snowbirding. What's the opposite of snowbirding? The other one.
Summering, the hiking season.
Yeah. All right. Sounds great. Okay. That's fantastic. And I knew I liked you when we worked together, but now I know why I like you even more. So, all right, let's talk about products. A favorite topic. I know you and I have been doing this a long time. So tell me about what you remember most about when we worked together.
So when we worked together, we were at Oracle and we were both in product management roles. Smitha was my boss. And we started around the same time. And what I felt like when we started working together is we were really aligned on the most important things from a product management perspective. So the importance of establishing a North Star and a strategic vision, the how of it, how epics and stories should be written and who should be doing that work and what level of detail. And really importantly, ensuring that the development team really had a good sense of the business reason behind the work they were doing, understanding that broader vision, the roadmap, the whole, what the whole picture looks like so that the work that the individuals were doing really contributed to that vision. And when we worked together, I felt like we were aligned and working towards really bringing a little bit more product management rigor to the teams and establishing some processes, especially around those high level, business case North Star kind of areas where if you're building a product and you don't really have a sense of where you're going to go, you can build all these great pieces, but they're not going to really dazzle the market by working well together. So I really enjoyed that and learned a lot. I hope that my perspective and your perspective together really benefited the organization. I think it did.
I totally think it did. Do you remember when we were, like you said, we started around the same time, and the fact that we were so aligned on product just made it so much easier for us to work together and to bring that rigor that the organization sorely needed. If you remember, surprisingly, there wasn't a defined North Star. There were different stars, let's call it,
that we had a constellation.
Right. There was a constellation that we were trying to corral and say what's truly our north, where are we trying to go, and how do we take the existing pieces that we have and enhance it and augment it to create something cohesive that everyone can rally behind. And I've seen this to be true not just at Oracle, but like in pretty much all my roles, having that defined, hey, this is where we're going, this is our strategy to get there, and these are our quarterly releases or whatever the roadmap might be, and what you're doing, to your point, as an individual is helping us achieve that North Star in this way. It makes everyone's work a lot more meaningful. And I think that was the biggest, I remember that about us too. I remember that strategy document we pulled together, and it actually got a lot of kudos from the team. And I remember someone saying, this is the best written strategy document that I've seen. And I think, credit to all of us that we pulled that together. So, okay, great. So tell me about a B2B enterprise SaaS product that you've built in the past that you're fond of and what made it special.
Sure. So, um, one of the products that I'm most proud of is a product I worked on several years ago, and it was my background's primarily, as you said, eClinical. It was a product to collect data from clinical trial participants. And at the time, most of the products in that area still involved a decent amount of bespoke coding. They were coded to the demands of the studies. The timelines were very long. The quality really depended on how well the people interacting with the customers could draw up the requirements. And our product was fully configurable. And when we talk about a North Star, we had such a clear mission and such a clear goal that there were lots of really important individual features that we could confidently say, okay, we will get to those, but those don't help us meet this goal of a fully configurable product we could put in the hands of our users. So that product was really unique in the market, and it was really embraced by the market. We got acquired pretty early on by a huge company that then operationalized it and has been very successful with it. But I was really proud of that work. It was the smallest company I've ever worked for. I think we were 7 or 8 people. It was these incredibly bright engineers. And it was really fun to spend some time. We'd sit in a backyard on a whiteboard and talk through a design and really quickly move that into something that we could see and touch and work with. So that was a great one. And it gave them industry the opportunity to move from a services-based model where you're at the time your vendor has available to do your work and to make changes and all that, you're just stuck with whatever you can be offered, to the kind of model where you're staffing it yourself as a company, and you're able to say, okay, well, this is our highest priority thing and it falls higher than anything else, so we're going to put our resources on that, where you can't do that when the vendor is doing customization for you. And I want to talk about one other one really quickly, but right now I'm working on a super exciting product, and it's leveraging AI for document generation in a really unique way. And we think that this is going to transform the clinical trial startup process. But what's really exciting about this is it's a greenfield market. So the products I've worked on in the past, you're always looking for innovative ways. You're always looking for places to make improvements and to expand the reach and all of those things. But you kind of can have a basic checklist of an eco product needs to do this, an RTSM needs to do this. And so having the opportunity, and again, I have just this amazing group of engineers around me, and having the opportunity to say, this is where we think the market is, talk to customers, understand their problems, and fill it in whatever way makes sense to us, is such a fun exercise and so different from anything I've done before.
That's fantastic. And the opportunity to do something in a greenfield, where it's a greenfield opportunity, or to do new product development, that's your Christmas present. Like when you have those opportunities and you're not really trying to clean up someone else's mess, or shepherd along a product that exists in the market. When you get those unique opportunities, those are always the best. So fantastic. And I'm pretty sure your prior experience, the first example you gave, carried forward into some of the work that we did at Oracle, because it's related, right? It's related in many ways to some of the patient engagement products that we were building. So that's
Absolutely.
fantastic. Yeah. Okay. So along this journey where you've either shepherded existing products or built brand new products, tell me some key metrics you track to determine success of your product.
Sure. And that's a great question, because I think in the B2C market, the product metrics are, there's just a list and you go figure them all out, and you have, the amount of time people are spending, the engagement, how many new users you have. And when you're doing a B2B product, your priorities are different. The information you need to gather is different. And some things like an NPS can still be used, but I really look in different areas to find out how successful we're doing. And the primary ones, first, I really look deeply at how well we're doing estimating our work and assessing things in the beginning, because all of my prioritization decisions and my team's prioritization decisions are going to be based off ROI. What do we think the value of this is in the market? And if we're estimating something and it actually takes 4 times as long, we may be making different decisions. So validating that, keeping an eye on that, making sure that we're realistic and meeting those goals, so that our ROIs that we're calculating in the beginning are really what we're ending up with, are super important. I spend a lot of time looking at adoption of features. So some of this is basic queries like how many studies are using this feature. And some of it is looking, I've had the opportunity to work on some pretty interesting product analytics software where you can go and see how people are clicking through your product. And, determining, are people using that new button that we added to improve efficiency? And no matter what you build and how long you spend on it, if it's not adopted by your users, it wasn't the right decision to build it. So that's always going to happen. It's a difficult field we're in, where you don't get the feedback until you've already put in the time and effort. But trying to get out small pieces and building on them so you can ensure that it's usable is important. And then also looking back on those times where you didn't make the best decision for the product. This isn't something that's going to be adopted, and figure out, why did we make that choice, and what can we do to better look at that decision in the future, so we're not continuing to make choices that aren't going to have high adoption. And then finally, I look at services margin a lot. In my industry, because we're still doing a lot of the vendor is providing the services, there's a balance between adding new features to the product and then accepting that some of the work is going to be papered over with services. So we have this great feature we could build, but we can hire people to do the work internally. It's not really going to be visible to the customer. So let's pick this other great innovative feature to work on. And you definitely want to do that a lot of the time. But if you don't end up getting that balance right, you're end up losing money on the services side, which isn't sustainable. So making sure you have that balance, that you're not too heavily burdening your team because it's an available ripcord, I think is really important and a good thing to look at.
Excellent metrics. I have some follow-on questions, of course, on all of those. So the first one on estimation. Tell a little bit. Let's talk a little bit more to our audience about how does that estimation get better with time? Is there some best practices that have helped you where the estimate and reality are very close within a small margin of error versus being 4x divergent? Like, what has helped you with that?
I think getting as specific as you can about what you're trying to build and breaking the pieces as small as possible as early as you can in that estimation process really helps with quality of estimation. If you're trying to figure out how long one big thing is going to take, I've found that those estimates are usually very far off. And once you can break it down into, okay, these are the 10 things we need to do, you can get a lot closer there. I will say, and if any of the previous engineering leads I've worked with watch this, they will know it's true and also be a little concerned that I'm sharing, but I kind of have an idea of when we are doing those big estimates, what generally we've hit before. So I have a multiplier that if person X tells me it's going to take 2 weeks, it's probably going to take 3. But if person Y says 2 weeks, it's likely to take 4. And I feel like it is the product manager's job that early in the process where you can't break it down is just to have a good understanding of the people that you're working with and be able to make those assessments, and not in a way that you're calling out somebody for not doing well, just so I'm making decisions based on my best experience and not necessarily pushing someone because they honestly think at that point it will take 2 weeks. It's just consistently that there's a lot of stuff we don't know yet. And those unknown unknowns are where that time comes in.
Absolutely. And I think it's important to know your team, and that intimacy with the engineering team is super critical. So that way, hey, here's this person's strength, but estimation is not one of them. So you make the adjustments as required so that you're managing expectations of all of the end consumers or stakeholders, internal stakeholders, that you need to worry about. So that's a great tip. The last one you mentioned with service margins, I think that's super critical, because that's when you truly are looking at P&L, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because you can have this great product that's really complex to implement and configure. So there's all the services dollars that we're spending to get a user to start using it. So I think that's super critical. I'm just vehemently agreeing with you on that one. And then the middle one where we're talking about usage. Super important. Way back when we did this, we didn't have some ready-made tools that we could just kind of incorporate into the code. Is there a favorite product that you use for this that's kind of more your gold standard, versus do you do a mishmash of, like, the typical Google Analytics, Amplitude, Pendo? What do you use?
Right now I'm using kind of a mismatch and a mishmash of things, and Google Analytics does provide good information, but I have used Pendo in the past, and I would say that's my gold standard when I can work at a company that can, put that in the budget, because it's not easy to dedicate the dollars that are required to something like that. But when we can make that work, I think that the information that you can get from Pendo is really, really makes it easy to put in workflows and just look at charts and understand, like the example I gave, where we wanted to see if somebody was clicking a button. There were other ways to do it, so you couldn't really use the database to tell that it was happening. So that was beneficial. Another really helpful thing is when making product decisions, we had an area that we didn't think people were really using. We were going to change up how it worked. And we went into Pendo because the customers that we're speaking to the most were like, oh, we never go this way. This isn't useful. When I looked, a decent percentage, maybe a quarter of our customers always went, this was their normal workflow. So if we had amended that, it wouldn't have impacted our biggest customers, but we had a decent chunk of regular customers that would have had to find a new way to work through the system. And there wasn't enough of a benefit to do that. So I find having that information super, super helpful.
That's great. Just 2 points to add to that. One is, I would say the more upfront UX work that's done, the more confident you are that all of the features you're building, and even just the usability, be it a button in the simplistic example, if that will be used, if it makes sense, if it's how the users are thinking. And of course, the wider that base that you're working with, the better, so that way you have more of a representative voice in what is designed. And the second thing would be just being very systematic about using the instrumentation that's available, right? And like you mentioned, just kind of learning from it, to say, hey, what could we have done differently? So that retrospective is super important, just so that, great, you have all this data, but if you're not learning from it, or if you're not learning from the insights it's providing, then you're not going to be continuously improving. So
Absolutely.
I completely agree with that. Okay, so let's talk about something a little bit a manager's job is never super easy. If it were, everybody would do it. So what's one of the biggest challenges you've faced with products? And what would you do differently if you could have a do-over?
So I think one of the biggest challenges I face is really understanding the sunk cost fallacy and dedicating my decision making to the fact that once it's spent, it's spent and you can't get it back. I think the example that I gave before, if something takes 4x to build, if you've made your decisions around it taking a month and you're a month and a half in and you find out you're 2.5 months away from having this functional feature, really being able to consider, does it still add value to our product to continue working on this, and thinking about that, all the opportunity cost of not doing other work. I think it's human nature, but I particularly struggle with it, that once we spent the time on it, I don't want to let it go, but sometimes it's the right choice. And I also think it's really difficult for team morale and motivation to make those calls. So it's balancing it out. It's really understanding what's left to do, and how it's going to impact the team to pull it back. But sometimes it's the right decision, and knowing when to make it, I think, is a really, really important part of product management, but is not the easiest one.
Yeah. Do you remember a time when, for the sake of team morale or whatever, you persevered knowing that we're way off? And is that what you would do over? I guess the second part of the question.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I was thinking about it the other way. Like, I have a good
Yeah.
example in my head of a time where I killed it, but you're right. There have been times, and usually I'll make those decisions when the feature isn't that big, right? Like, if it's a feature that's going to take several months to build, the team morale, I would look to deal with that in another way, to have really open conversations, explain the business process, bring them on board. But if you have something that was supposed to take 3 days and it's going to take 2 weeks, I'm probably less likely to move on from that, just because of the what that does to the team if you're doing that consistently. And it comes back to what we talked about before, that's where you see that you really need to work on your estimation abilities, and you need to figure out, are we providing enough information up front? Are the stories clear enough that people can properly estimate? Do people understand their working process? All of that, I think, when you have those times, and I've definitely had that, where a 3-day thing took 2 weeks and I just went for it, but we looked at what went wrong there, do a retrospective, understand the problems that you faced,
Yeah.
and try to prevent them in the future.
Yeah, totally makes sense. Okay. On to fun stuff. Tell me about a time when you influenced the direction of a product, and what that resulted in.
Sure. And this was actually how I found my way to product management. Several years ago, I was working for a company, and I was on the customer facing side. We had a product team, and it was a randomization and trial supply management product. So we did drug returns in our system, and we were getting these complaints from a customer that the process was taking too long, and they, like all customers, had the way they thought it should be fixed. And when I talked to them about it, I'm like, I don't think that's really going to solve the problem. And where we landed is they connected me to a person doing this job. So I was talking to
Mm.
this clinical research associate. I remember it was like late in the evening, and they were like, the evening is the only time those people travel a lot for their work. They go to sites and
Mhm.
look at the data and assess it, and then um, she would go back to her room and she would do all this accountability work, and it was taking her hours and hours a night. So she called me, we got on a screen share, I watched how she went through the process, and I was able to figure out a way, understanding our software and then understanding their usage, where we could relatively make some relatively minor tweaks to really improve things. And the So we worked through that. We got our team developing it. They moved forward really quickly because it was a relatively easy change. And I remember I got a text from her, like 3 weeks after we released the new feature, and she sent me a picture of a glass of wine on the bar in the hotel, and she was like, I don't have to spend my whole night working. Like, I get done at the site, I spend
Love
20
it.
minutes wrapping this up, and then I'm able to enjoy my night. And that was it was such a dramatic moment for me, that I could impact somebody's life. Like, one person
Absolutely.
and there are lots of people doing that job. So hopefully many people have an easier time. They have a less stressful job. They can do their work better because of the changes we made and because we listened to them and we understood their problems instead of just saying, oh, you want this to work differently? Let's do that.
Yeah, no, super important. And I think what better way to move into product management than becoming the voice of the customer, right? So that's fantastic. Such a great example. It gives me the warm fuzzies. My own history for moving into product management was I was the developer of the product that I became the product manager for. So I knew the software really, really well. And this is, again, we're not going to timestamp, but this was way back when we used to have those things called betas, remember? So we would have like a software beta, and you'd have all these customers jump on a conference call, and they'd like sometimes trash the product and say, this is not working, that's not working. But you learn from it. You learn from it, you make improvements before you release the product. And I think being an advocate for the customer and bringing their voice into the product building process is perhaps the most important job of a product manager. So, yeah, I love that example. All right.
And I love that you started in dev. That's such a great way. Like when you understand your product that way, you can have those conversations with the customer and really understand the impact of the changes you're discussing. Both wonderful ways to get there.
Right. And there's so many ways to get into product management, but for me, that was my way. And when the person was telling me the problem, I was like, oh, that's that piece of code. I know I wrote it. I need to change this right here. It's what I needed to do. So, okay. This is a special topic I reserve only for my female guests. So I want to bring special topic up. I know you've been a woman in technology, woman in product, and I know we have both navigated leadership in chaos. So tell me with that context, right? Tell me about the biggest learning, biggest reward. I'm not talking about monetary, but like more professional satisfaction that you've had being a woman in product, a woman in tech and leadership.
I think the biggest reward for me is to lift other women up in tech, to find, and to your point earlier, none of us are, some people, I'm sure, but a lot of people come through to product management in a circuitous way. So to find other women that are excited to learn, are excited to do a good job, and to either mentor them, or if they're on my team, champion them and coach them and guide them. That's, and not just for women, definitely, all the people on my team, I think that that's my proudest professional accomplishment, is what I've been able to do from a leadership position and to develop future leaders. But especially as a woman in technology, representing that in, I've kind of had lots of different positions, but right now I'm in a senior leadership role, and being a woman in that role, and we have a really large number of women engineers. It's fantastic. Our gender balance is skewed female, which I think is really rare in tech. But to have those women have the opportunity to see that career path and know that that's a valid option, and to have somebody championing them and supporting them and understanding what it's like to be a working woman as you go through your life, and the differences that you experience versus men that are having the same trajectory, having the same career path. It's, everyone makes different choices and everyone has different things happening. But when I can support women, when I can grow women, and help them develop their careers, I think that's my favorite part.
Yeah, absolutely. And I couldn't agree more. It reminds me of the statement from Madeleine Albright, who said, there's a special place in hell for women who don't help other women. And that's something that's, I think I probably heard that the first time when I was at one of those, what was it? The Anita Borg, the conference for women in tech, where essentially someone said this, and I was like, wow, it just like stayed in my head. And I will actually add to that to say, to have a female role model who is A, authentic, B, championing for her team, again, men or women, and genuinely invested in their success is a beautiful gift. It's a beautiful gift. And we need to be generous in setting that example and giving away that gift very freely. So I'm so happy. Well, our paths intersected, and
Mhm.
hopefully, I know you're on this podcast, but hopefully you feel like we did that together, where we were at, with the teams that we had the privilege to lead. So I think, oh, I love that. It gives me the warm fuzzies. All right. So you mentioned earlier on in the conversation about your current role at Trial, where you're using AI, Gen AI in your product for documentation and such. So tell me a little bit more about how AI, Gen AI, or even like agentic AI, how that's changing how you approach building products, and what's your perspective on that for product management in general.
I think that the biggest change for me is understanding that developing a greenfield product in a changing landscape is a very different thing. So I'm a person that does 18-month roadmaps, and I have flexibility. I understand that the market changes. Like, my roadmaps go like this so that you have room farther out when you don't really know exactly what you're going to build. But I always have a good sense of where I'm going and how to get there. Um, and I feel like working in AI right now, where generative AI is changing so much every day, that has a lot less value. If I'm spending my time thinking about what I think I'm going to do in 18 months, I'm not reading about what's happening today. And I'm not absorbing the way that the work that we're doing changes and adapts based on what's available in the market, and figuring out how to leverage the new features and advancements that are coming in all the time, figuring out the ones that are really going to be beneficial, that are going to move our mission forward, the things that are like, that's really cool, but I can use that like on the side to help me with something, but it's not really something that I want to bring into this product world. So I think that's the biggest change, is that still having a North Star for
Mhm.
sure, and strategic vision is critical, but the amount that you can really define that and focus on what it's going to look like in the future, it just feels like it has a lot less benefit now. So that's been a big shift for me. And I'm enjoying it. I think it's great. I think that the things that AI will do, it feels like, I know people get worried about, what happens to their job, but to me it just changes jobs. It makes you have to do less of the annoying
Mundane.
mundane, exactly, and then you can focus on the things that you're really good at and bring new things into the world. So I think net it's going to be a huge positive, but
Yeah.
to get there as part of a person developing a product within this space, it's just figuring out what that looks like day to day and how it's changing.
Yeah, no, totally agree. I think I don't understand, honestly. Perhaps it's because we are people in tech that we're not so intimidated by this new tech that is now like part of every news feature. Everybody's talking about it, right? But I think I'm less concerned about it taking over any job. I think anything that's repetitive that can be automated. Let's think back even like 20 years when software kind of came about, or SaaS products came about. It's the same thing. This is that next level of evolution. Um, if if we're able to leverage technology to solve a business problem, the solving of the business problem is not going to go away. And
Mhm.
that's where product managers spend most of their time, right? To say, What is that business problem we need to build a solution for? And how can we be differentiated? How can we be better than the competition? What's our unique value proposition? So that human thinking, I don't think will be replaced by AI, but the rest of the boring, mundane stuff, if it can make my life easier, hey, go for it. So that's awesome. Okay, we're almost at the end of our conversation. Any book recommendations you have that either you use for product building or otherwise for our audience?
Yeah, I'd love to read. I try to balance it from reading like junky fiction books that are like cotton candy and some stuff where I'm learning about how my brain works and then product stuff. I think one of the books that, and I don't use the whole thing, but one of the product books that I got the most specific things that I've adapted into my process was Working Backwards. It's written by a couple of Amazon guys. I don't have their names, sorry, but so there's in there they recommend things like starting off with a press release before you write a new product, and I did that with this product that we're working on, and it helped me get a level understanding of what we were trying to do across our organization. It made sense to engineers. It made sense to sales. It made sense to services. Like that, bless you. That was a really big, that was a really big one for me. Radical candor, not so much product management as just management, but understanding. I am generally a nice person. And early in my management career, I had to understand that it is nice to give somebody feedback that improves them. If you're just, glossing over and moving people along, you don't, what we talked about earlier, you're not developing people, you're not helping people improve in their roles. So that one was a good one for me.
Radical candor. I like that.
And then the Lean Product Playbook, I really liked. There's a few of those real basic product books. They're a little bit old now, but that really help you understand iterative development, getting features in the hands of the users early, being able to get feedback, understand what you're doing, make sure you're traveling down the right path, those kinds of things.
Love it. Love it. I'm going to put the Radical Candor book in my Amazon cart. And do you remember the name of the book written by the two Amazon people?
Working Backwards was the book. I don't remember the guys.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Exactly like the book is about. Okay.
Exactly.
It's nice when the names are intuitive like that.
Yeah, both of those are very good examples.
Yes, indeed. That's fantastic. I hope all the audience benefited from listening to Amanda's perspectives and her techniques and her success as a product leader. Amanda, thank you so much for being on this show. Really loved our interaction when we worked every day together, and I'm very grateful and thankful that we're still very connected. Much success to you in your current role and in the future. Thank you for being on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. And Smitha, I do want to say that when I think about women that are role models and people that have shown me the way in product, I think you're my only female product boss. So being able to see you and see what you've done in your career since we worked together, and the work that you're doing now and how you're broadly helping, the product world, I've just been really impressed and really happy to be part of your journey.
Okay, I've never cried on the show, and I don't want to start that now, but thank you. That means a lot to me coming from you. So I appreciate that so very much. And thank you everyone for listening. I'll talk to you soon.